pick up any copy of a Next magazine or a New Zealand House and Garden, and there'll be an article about a woman who had a germ of an idea and decided to turn it into a business, and now has a thriving little home business that supports her family and her children and her lifestyle. But in my experience, that's a pretty unusual situation. Over the last 8 years, I've worked with around 500 people that have decided they wanted a lifestyle change, or they wanted to change their career direction, and the way they were going to do that was to start a business. Of that 500 or so, about 2/3 of them were women considering returning to the workforce. The challenges they face is that they've been out of action for too long, or their skill set is dated compared to the other people in the industry. Their qualifications are old, a 10-year-old degree that really doesn't hold a whole lot of cop with a new employer. And they have some passion, often related to having been at home with small children, and decide that it's time to turn that into a business idea. And so they come to see somebody like me and say, I'm good at making these things, or I have a passion for this particular thing, I want to turn it into a business, which is a really worthy idea. The challenge they have is twofold. First of all, often they don't have the money to make it happen, and so it's a micro business that really is buying on the job. And secondly, they haven't really thought about the impact that becoming self-employed is going to have on their family. Your average entrepreneur doesn't stay in business very long because most of them are unsuccessful, and I believe that the reason most of them are unsuccessful is they haven't really thought about the impact on the long term of what it is they're doing. So the woman who has $1,000, $10,000, and thinks that she can start a business to give her a great lifestyle is unlikely to be successful. Sure, there's some exceptions to that rule, but as a general rule of thumb, you could argue that most of them will be out of business again within 5 years. So what can be done about that? When I worked with unemployed people, largely women, largely that had been on DPB, and many who were highly qualified in their former pre-child lives, there were some interesting similarities and interesting anomalies amongst those women. The one that took the view of, I just want to get myself off a benefit, and started small and worked their way forward with a very step-by-step view, most of them were still in business 3 or 4 years later. The ones that had lofty ideas of franchising around the world within 6 months never made it at all. The thing that I'm most proud of is that all the people I worked with gave me one of the best success rates in New Zealand for start-up small business. And the reason for that is not because of the training and the support that we gave those women when they got into business, it's because we stopped 90% of them from going into business in the first place. How did we do that? We got them to think in a broader view. How was this business really truly going to impact on their lives? Was it really realistic to think that they could have a business that could be run around small children? When you work, you get sick leave. When you're self-employed, there's no such thing. When you work, you have one employer. When you're self-employed, every one of your customers is the people that you work for, and you're responsible to every single one. To take the view that maybe it's good to start small, that's a great way to start. But if your plan is to create something that will perhaps be a legacy for your family, you've got to be a whole lot more realistic. So what kind of support do these women need? First of all, they need to have somebody that's grounded, that can give them some great mentoring advice, and sometimes a reality check on whether or not that business is actually going to succeed or not. And people that are business coaches, business mentors, that have worked in business for a number of years, particularly other women that have tried to make it happen and either succeeded or failed, are a good place to start for that. Secondly, they have to have a long-term view. Is this something that's just going to get them through until their children start school again, or until their children leave home again? Or is this about a long-term sustainable view of going into self-employment? Do they want to buy a job, be happy with minimum wage, which is what most people in startup businesses are working for? Or are they looking at something more long-term that will employ people and allow them the freedom to work towards becoming a business owner rather than a business worker? We talk lots about people working on their businesses instead of in them, and the reality is that at the beginning, most people are working in their business 24/7. They never let it go. That's okay if it's short term, but it's not a sustainable option long term, and that's why those particular nuances of being a stay-at-home mother in particular are really important to be taken into account. In the case of the woman with the enlightened and supported husband, even then, it's a huge lifestyle change to move from being a stay-at-home mother with an income coming in from a partner to starting your own business and having the challenges of then balancing all those other parts of your life. Because even those enlightened husbands, I'm afraid to say, in my view, generally still expect the lion's share of housekeeping, child rearing, and all the things that go with that being attached to the mother and not to the father. So my first question for you, if you're a woman thinking about going into business on your own, is what is it you're trying to achieve here? Are you trying to achieve an opportunity for freedom? Because the reality is, in the short term, that's not going to happen. Are you wanting to broaden your skill set because what you have is out of date? That's a good start. Are you wanting to create a fantastic income? Possible in the long term, but don't realistically think that's going to happen overnight. And think about those things that happen in your life on a daily basis. Those aren't going to go away. Who's going to look after the children? How's it going to work when they're sick? Do you have a partner that's supportive? Yes, no, maybe. At what degree is that person supportive? How old are your children? How self-sufficient are they? Think about those things before you even consider entering into owning your own business. And then you can start to think about what it is that you're good at and whether it is going to become a marketable skill. And that's what we'll talk about next time.